बेबी चुप So welcome back, everybody. And that was the Dunia Drum and Dance Company welcoming us back into the ballroom for the second plenary. They were great, weren't they? Thank you so much. So I would now like to invite Abel Lopez, the chairman of the Americans for the Arts Board of Directors, to join me on stage. And as Abel approaches, I want to thank all of you who participated in nominating or voting this year for our Leadership Award recipients. The annual Leadership Awards are presented each year in conjunction with the annual convention to recognize the achievements of individuals, organizations, or programs committed to enriching their communities through the arts. And one of the things that we do in addition to this is we do a number of publicizing things about all the awards that we give out during the year, these and private sector awards, etc., in full-page ads in the Chronicle of Philanthropy and other places to let leaders and decision makers know about your good work. So thank you.
Thank you, Bob. It's an honor to present these awards today. But before doing so, I'd like to ask the members of the Americans for the Arts Board of Directors, as well as members of our United States Urban Arts Federation Executive Committee, the State Arts Action Network Council, the Arts Education Council, the Public Art Network Council, the Emerging Leaders Council, the Private Sector Council, and our state captains to please stand and be applauded for their dedication to advancing the arts in America. So please stand. Thank you all, and now we move on to our awards. First, I'm happy to present the Arts Education Award, recognizing transformational leadership in arts education through strategic planning, programming, and partnerships to achieve community goals. The 2017 Arts Education Leadership Award goes to Sarah Johnson, Director of the Wheel Music Institute at Carnegie Hall. Over her career in arts education, Ms. Johnson has been a noted leader in ensuring equitable access to arts education for the highest needs students through meaningful systems change, including now overseeing more than $10 million worth of high-quality music education each year. On behalf of the Americans for the Arts Board of Directors and the Arts Education Network, I'm pleased to present this award to Sarah Johnson.
So congratulations, and thank you for giving the award back to me. I appreciate that. The Aline Valkanis State Arts Advocacy Award recognizes an individual at the state level whose arts advocacy efforts have dramatically affected the political landscape. So the 2017 Aline Valkanis State Advocacy Award goes to John Schratweiser. Yes, special whoop for John. And he is the past executive director of the Maryland Citizens for the Arts and current director of the Kent County Arts Council. Since 2010, under his leadership, Maryland Citizens for the Arts helped raise public funding for the arts in the state of Maryland by nearly 60%, which is pretty fabulous, culminating with Republican Governor Larry Hogan approving the largest ever state appropriation for the arts in Maryland at $19.3 million for fiscal year 2018. Mr. Schratweiser is also being honored for his dynamic work as the council chair in the State Arts Action Network. So he's not able to be with us today, but on behalf of the Americans for the Arts Board of Directors and the State Arts Action Network, I extend the award to Mr. Schratweiser, and because he's not here, Abel will present me with the award. Thank you very much. And we're going to wave to John.
I am now pleased to present the Michael Newton Award, which is given annually to honor an individual for his or her innovation in developing arts and business partnerships for the arts and/or long-term achievement in effective and creative techniques to engage the private sector. The 2017 Michael Newton Award goes to Dr. Guillermina Gonzalez, Executive Director of the Delaware Arts Alliance. Dr. Gonzalez was selected for this year's award for her exemplary partnership with the business community and innovative strategies to use this network to drive a unified strategy, furthering her organization's mission of advocating for public support of the arts in Delaware and demonstrating that the arts are a core driver of workforce, economic, and education success. It is my honor on behalf of the Americans for the Arts Board of Directors and the Private Sector Network to give this award, the 2017 Michael Newton Award, to Dr. Gonzalez.
So each year, the Public Art Network Award is given to recognize an individual or an organization that demonstrates innovative contributions and or exemplary commitment to the field of public art. The 2017 Public Art Network Leadership Award goes to Kath Bruner, Director of Public Art at For Culture in King County, Washington. She is someone who continuously demonstrates her ability to create meaningful opportunities for artists to affect public policy. She stimulates dialogue and shapes the design of the public realm through this work. Kath Bruner understands the need to continuously reevaluate the status quo, which all of you are involved constantly in that kind of self-introspection. On behalf of the Americans for the Arts Board of Directors and the Public Art Network, I'm really pleased to present Kath Bruner to come forward and there you are, presented this award and accept the 2017 Public Art Network Award.
The American Express Emerging Leaders Award is given each year to a visionary and/or young arts leader who demonstrates an ability to engage and impact his or her community. Thanks to the generous support of the American Express Foundation, the Emerging Leaders Award also comes with a check for the recipient. The 2017 American Express Emerging Leaders Award goes to Kevin Seaman, artist, curator, and consultant of Bring Your Own Queer, a San Francisco-based community arts organization that hosts free and low-cost community events that promote accessibility, diversity, and inclusion. Mr. Seaman was selected for this year's award for his work in fostering greater understanding between disparate segments of the LGBTQ community and its allies. On behalf of American Express, the Americans for the Arts Board of Directors, and the Emerging Leaders Network, I am pleased to present this award to Mr. Seaman.
This award also comes with a check of American Express. So congratulations to Kevin, and thank you to American Express, the American Express Foundation, for your ongoing underwriting of the American Express Emerging Leaders Award. Now it's my honor to present the Selina Roberts Autumn Award. It is given each year to recognize an individual working in arts management who has made a meaningful contribution to his or her local community and who exemplifies extraordinary leadership qualities, just like Selina Autumn had. This particular award I'm very honored to present in 2017 to Laura Zucker. So, before she actually gets the award, too late, Laura Zucker has been a driving force in the development and support of the arts and culture ecosystem of Los Angeles County over the last 25 years. You already heard her work referenced in the economic impact study and several other times in the course of this conference. She is retiring from that role in just a couple of weeks. Talk about big shoes to fill. Her leadership has led to a number of significant policy changes, programs and initiatives that influence not only the region, but the field at large. Under her guidance, the Arts Commission is undertaking a major initiative to develop recommendations for ways to enhance the participation and the leadership of individuals from underrepresented communities and communities in the arts, exploring diversity, equity, and inclusion in arts and culture. The initiative includes large inclusive processes and process approaches that will culminate with a report back to the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors with actionable recommendations for the county. Actually, exactly what was talked about in the previous panel, and the field at large. Laura Zucker is a fierce advocate of the arts. She walks the walk and inspires her staff at the Arts Commission with her lead from behind approach. There is no better example of an innovative, risk-taking, and motivating leader than Laura Zucker. So, on behalf of the Americans for the Arts Board of Directors and the National Endowment for the Arts, this is co-presented, I am pleased to invite Laura Zucker to come forward, which she has already done before I invited her. But that's just the way she rolls. That's the way Laura rolls. And I'm glad that she will be accepting the 2017 Selina Roberts Autumn Award for exemplary leadership in the arts. And a check comes with that one too. So.
And finally, our seventh and newest leadership award, the Robert E. Gard Award for Arts and Community Life. Robert Gard was one of the founders of the local arts movement in America and was a champion for the role of the arts in the creation and maintenance of healthy, vibrant, equitable communities. It is in that spirit that the Gard Award celebrates exemplary work at the intersection of the arts and community life. It aims to raise up projects from the last year by individuals, organizations, or consortia working to cross the arts and into other aspects of community life in meaningful, immeasurable ways.
In every field, we need heroes and we need stories. And the Gard Award aims to celebrate some of the great local work that you are all doing and that you bring them to a national spotlight, which is why it is entirely driven by you. Earlier this year, over 80 amazing projects, 80 projects were submitted for consideration. A panel of 3 arts leaders, Denver's Director of Cultural Affairs, Tariana Navas-Neves, St. Louis artist and activist Day Nichols, and arts leader and historian Mario Gard-Ewell, narrowed the projects to 10 finalists, which were then voted on by you. And Mario is here. Mario, where are you? There she is over there. And the Gard Award is named after her father, Robert Gard. And so, I guess I do this part. Good. So, I get to do more. On behalf of the Americans for the Arts Board of Directors, I am pleased to announce that this year's winning project, as selected by you, is, and they don't know this yet, the Red Can Graffiti Jam. And so, Red Can Graffiti Jam is an annual event that converges graffiti, hip-hop, and traditional Native American arts, culture, and heritage each summer in Eagle Butte, South Dakota. And I am happy to invite Julie Garrow, Executive Director of the Cheyenne River Youth Project. the primary partner and creator of the Graffiti Jam, up to accept the 2017 Robert E. Gard Award on behalf of the Red Can Graffiti Jam.
Hey, sorry about that.
So, 2 minutes out. Okay. Abel, do you have more to say to the?
I would like to introduce Bob. There you go.
We have never been early on anything at this conference in the 32 years that I have been working with this organization, so I want applause for this moment. And as we prepare for Leader Pelosi to come, I wanted to say a couple of things, and I'm going to be watching Mara for the thumbs up sign. Right now it's down. But I think everybody knows, we've been talking about it for the last several days, how important leadership is right now in the political front for our cause, for the cause of the arts. It's important for everything, but for the cause of the arts, leadership becomes critical as we face the challenges that are coming from Congress, the White House, and folks out there, the Heritage Foundation and others that simply have a different opinion, and they don't want art and culture to be supported publicly. One of the things that we try to do is on our website with the Mobilization Fund to set up examples of arguments that those who want us not to be funded put forward, and responses to each one of those arguments, so that when they say things like that the arts should not be a government priority, we can point to every other nation in the world and the amounts of money that the other nations invest, because it is a government priority. You know, the list of nations in the world ends with New Zealand, and then under New Zealand is the United States. And if we had an 8-time increase of what we have coming from the National Endowment for the Arts, we would still be under New Zealand. So we have a ways to go on a front like that. Or some other argument might be that the arts are not in the Constitution. But if you take a look at the Constitution, you will actually see, because I've actually read the Constitution, that Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution talks about the value of writing, of authorship, of the sciences, which were a different interpretation back then, and the words "the useful arts." And some of you might recall what John Adams thought the useful arts were, which was what you do: tapestry, ceramics, theater, music, all of the things that are the arts of today. And so with these arguments that we have reasons for continuing the support of the arts, not the least of which is that it's a very small investment. When Randy did his presentation today, we see the benefit of this investment, but the investment itself is 46 cents per person in the United States of America. So it's a tiny investment with a huge, huge payoff. So that is, I think, one exciting thing that I wanted to bring to your attention. The other is to emphasize what a bipartisan approach we take to advancing connections to leaders on every side, on each side of the aisle across America, because we have a situation that's so tight that we cannot win support for the arts without leadership and votes from both sides. And so Some of you were with us at National Arts Advocacy Day, where we had the opportunity to give our public sector award to Alaska Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski. And she was the speaker there. Any Alaskans here? Yes, there you go, okay. Each one of the caucuses that we work with, the Congressional Arts Caucus and the STEAM Caucus, the Senate Caucus, has both a Democrat and Republican co-chair. So that is also really important for us, that not only Louise Slaughter, Democrat and a great leader, is there with us, but Leonard Lance from New Jersey is also there with us. New Jersey people are here, yes. So that bipartisan approach is the way that we're going to sew together the support that we actually need. And so with that, I saw this from Mara, which, you know, it's, there it is. So, oh, getting mic'd, okay. So what I would like to do is start to introduce a great friend of Americans for the Arts. It's fitting to have recognized the exemplary work of so many arts leaders up here just a few moments ago, immediately prior to welcoming our next guest, who is a leader, to the convention stage. The creation of healthy, vibrant, equitable communities through the arts is not possible without policies and funding that not just allow, but encourage the great role that arts and culture can and should play in community life. That is something that House Democratic Leader Nancy Pelosi knows really well. As one of our staunchest allies in Congress, a frequent guest speaker and key motivator at National Arts Advocacy Day, a vocal supporter of continued and expanded federal funding for the arts and culture, and an outspoken defender of the creative industries in her home, right here, of San Francisco, and across the country. Leader Pelosi is the perfect person to speak to the intersection of the arts and politics. I'm in a second going to welcome you to somebody who is the Congresswoman for the California 12th right here in San Francisco. And interestingly, that number has changed 3 times as she has been the congressperson here, as redistricting and change happens across America, which we were talking about earlier. She is the 52nd Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives during the 110th and 111th congressional periods. She is the first woman, the first Californian, the first Italian-American to lead a major party. She is a friend of the arts, and I would like you to join me in welcoming our great friend and a great leader, House Democratic Leader Nancy Pelosi, to the stage.
Right here? Where am I?
That's great. This is wonderful. Your fans. Welcome.
Thank you for your nice words. I'm glad that you mentioned that I was not only the first woman speaker, but the first Italian-American and the first Californian.
We have 1,200 of your friends here, and we are very excited to have you with us, and we know how busy you are, and we really thank you for this.
My pleasure.
I have a series of questions for you, myself, and then we've actually asked a number of arts leaders out here in the audience for some questions, and we got a chance to look at them, and I have a few more to ask afterwards.
Okay.
So with
And how long is this going to be? I have all the time in the world, you know.
Oh, yeah, right. I see a lot of watch checkers out there on your team, so I know that we...
No, that's my granddaughter. She was at Cheeseburger after this is over, so she's 8 years old.
Oh, that's great. Well,
Bella.
is she here?
Bella. She's waving. She just planted a tree. We just planted a tree. Well, it changed, but we just planted a tree at the AIDS Grove this morning, so she was very good at that. Thank you. Age Memorial Grove.
So the first thing I'd love to ask you is a little bit about San Francisco. You've been involved in politics here since 1969 and representing this city in Congress since 1987. And in that time, San Francisco has grown immensely, and the Bay Area has boomed, and arts and culture are everywhere. And we've seen that in this conference, fabulously done and presented to us all across the city. So if you put aside your national leadership role for a moment, can you reflect a little bit on how San Francisco has become such a center for the arts and for the creative economy?
Well, thank you very much. First, let me join in all those who have already welcomed you to San Francisco. We just think it's heaven on earth, and we're awfully glad that you're here to make it so even further. Let me commend Bob Lynch. He's just the best. He's for so long, so relentless, so persistent, so knowledgeable, so effective. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you very much.
Now, let me just set the record straight, because my husband is here. 1969, my husband's born and raised in San Francisco, but when he worked in New York after college, we came to San Francisco in 1969. But I wasn't in politics. I was a volunteer. I was a rah-rah, but I was in the course of having 5 babies in 6 years at that time. So I was raising my family. And maybe if you say I was in politics because I could see all the opportunity, the tender, loving care, the attention, opportunity that our 5 children had. And I just couldn't handle the fact that 1 in 5 children in our country lives in poverty. So that experience pulled me back into politics. I was raised in a political family in Baltimore, Maryland. Anybody here from Maryland? My father, Thomas D'Alessandro Jr., my brother, Thomas D'Alessandro III, were both mayors of Baltimore. And so I was oriented to public service and that it's a noble calling. But at that time, I didn't even wash my face with 5 babies in 6 years. But then I was motivated by children to then volunteer and go on from there. But this city is just so arts-oriented, and that's what makes San Francisco what it is, and it makes it an honor to represent it in Congress. And the arts have grown. I mean, we've had the imperial arts, the ballet, the symphony, the opera, the museums, one of which we will be at tonight. And then we have all the community arts and the ethnic arts and the arts at Hunters Point. That was a big project for me when I first went to Congress, to protect the artists at Hunters Point. So our support for the arts is not just, it's who we are. It's in our DNA. And it was, frankly, one of my motivations for the Affordable Care Act, because so many artists would come to me and say, I have to have another job. Instead of concentrating on my artistic work, I have to have another job so I can get health care. And so the Affordable Care Act, which enables people to pursue their lives, their liberty, the pursuit of happiness, is really so much a part of that. But going back before the social media was so strong, but go back 20, 25 years, if something went wrong without the arts in Washington, D.C., somebody just sneezed wrongly about it, I'd get 5,000 communications immediately. So that's how many people are engaged in the arts, and how many people here not necessarily engaged, but care about the arts.
Just a follow-up on the children. 5 children,
Yeah.
but do I have 9 grandchildren?
9 grandchildren.
9 grandchildren.
And Bella's
as
here.
well.
Bella's
And that's
here.
right. So what about arts education in their lives and in your own life, for example? You had the nuns, I think. I had the Jesuits, and we didn't have any arts in my curriculum, so we got it after school. But today, it's so critical in school. And
So critical. Well, let me just say that the arts have, in the schools that my children went to here, the arts were important. But I want to brag about one of my daughters, Jacqueline. When she was a little girl, like in grade school, 6th, 7th grade, like that, she was very, very much inclined toward the arts. she would, as her community service, would visit sick children her age and draw with them and color with them and do things with them. And she just saw her life's vocation as that, seeing how these children thrived when they were, could be creative. And now we're just talking about sick children there. So she now she lives in Houston, Texas. She has a school called Art Mix Learning, where she teaches children with special needs and children not necessarily needing special needs, but the mix is what she loves, is to have all the children together, unless they need very special private lessons. But it's like her vocation, teaching children, especially with special needs, and see how they thrive with the arts. All children thrive with the arts. I travel the whole country, and especially in my own district, which I know intimately in terms of the schools and the rest. Moms in the poorest sections will say, please don't take the arts out of the schools. That's where our kids get their most confidence. That's what they enjoy, gives them confidence then to learn other subjects and the rest. This is so important, and the whole country knows that. So the arts in the schools is probably one of the most wholesome things that we can do for our country, first and foremost, for our children, their aspirations. And I've told Bob this before, and some of you may have been at the rally in Washington earlier this year in March. I think that the arts are the element that is going to bring our country together. It's one place where we are united. We laugh together, we cry together, we're inspired together, we dance, we sing. We just find our common ground. Again, Bob's heard me say this a million times. The poet Shelley once wrote, the greatest force for moral good is imagination. Imagination, to be creative, of course, but imagination to see yourself in someone else's shoes, to share an experience and the rest. So we have challenges in our country, we know that, but I do think that the arts have a real responsibility and opportunity to bring us together. So I thank you, all of you, for what you are doing. Well, my husband, all of our family are arts oriented. He goes with the museum to their arts trips each year. He goes to every ballet. I'm not always here, the opera, the symphony, all of that. But also just to enjoy new artists in the community and the rest, and to see in the ethnicity of our city, the beautiful diversity of the arts, the pride that people take in their own heritage, how that is expressed. San Francisco is a very, very special place.
Just one other follow-up that occurs to me, sort of a water issue. I was in Baltimore recently having dinner, and as I was getting ready to go in, I noticed a plaque on the building next to it had your name on it, said you had grown up in that house. And what I saw also, you just referenced it, that your dad was the mayor there. He was also a congressman. Your brother.
When I was born, he was a congressman, yeah.
And then your brother is the mayor, and another brother here on the county and city board. And so, what was in the water at your dining table that got everybody so civically involved? And any advice to all of us to help kids get more civically involved today?
Well, I grew up in an Italian-American neighborhood in Little Italy in Baltimore, Maryland, and that plaque there is on the street, Nancy D'Alessandro Pelosi, Via, Nancy D'Alessandro Pelosi. So our Italian orientation, of course, always drove us to the opera, even to visit my grandparents. It was opera. My husband's family too, very, very much involved with the opera. So just to get to my Italian roots for a moment. We grew up to understand that public service was a noble calling, that we all had a responsibility to each other. More than you want to know on the subject, but when I was born, I was born into a family that was devoutly Catholic, fiercely patriotic, immensely proud of our Italian-American heritage, and staunchly democratic. Just to tell you. And we saw the connection of all of that. And we saw our role in public service as connecting our responsibilities, whether they were faith-based or community-oriented. And we lived in a neighborhood where many immigrants would be coming. My father's mother was born in Baltimore. Her parents were born in Venice and Genoa. But then the intermarriage, this or that, we were all sort of connected. But it was though that we all had a responsibility through our church, through our ethnicity, and through our community writ large. So it was always about, we all have a responsibility to each other, not exactly so political as it was faith-based in many ways. And then it took a political form. We saw the Democratic Party as that party that went down that path. So I don't know if it was in the water, but civic responsibility was part of our lives. And part of that is that my father, being the mayor, we always had the box at the opera, the box at the symphony, all of that, which my mother, just, again, you didn't come to hear this, more on the subject thing. When my mother was a little girl, her grandmother had the first box at the Baltimore lyric opera, the civic opera, whatever they called it at that time. The first box. So when she was a little girl, Toscanini came to Baltimore to conduct. And as a little girl, she gave Toscanini a bouquet of flowers. Some years later, maybe 20, 25 years later, he came back again, and as the wife of the mayor, she gave Toscanini a bouquet of flowers. And as I say, her grandmother had the first box. We had the mayor's box, so that was something that was part of our lives, along with going to the baseball games and all the rest of that, sports.
So a little more continuing on the political part that you just raised, you were raised in it. So the politics of the day, the civic engagement and activism that we've seen since November has really been empowering, and to all of us here, fighting the fight. And as you know from being with us in March at National Arts Advocacy Day, we set the highest attendance record we had ever had with over 30 years, over 700 arts advocates there throughout the day, and 2,000 the night before.
It was great. It was fabulous. How many of you were there? Am I there? All right. It was great. Well, nice to see you again.
So, like that outpouring of advocacy happening all across the country, all of these people here aspire for change, change in their own communities, change nationally, and we know that advocacy is a lifelong, enterprise. So, how, in ways, can advocates help? What more can they do? What should they do differently that works?
Wow. Well, here's the thing. I've been in politics my whole life, one way or another in the family, or then later myself, and I have never seen such an incredibly fabulous outpouring of concern, seeing a sense of urgency, wanting to take responsibility. People seeing urgency, what can I do to help? That equals opportunity. And let us, put politics aside and just say, nothing is more important or more eloquent to a member of Congress or any elected official than the voice of his or her own constituents. You're the boss. You are the bosses. You are the bosses. So you have to let your voice be heard on these subjects. And with social media being what it is today, there's really such a facilitation of voices. As I said to you, 20 years ago, somebody sneezes in the wrong way in Washington, D.C. toward the arts, 5,000 people that day will write to me. Now the numbers are endless and cumulative across the country. And this all comes down to budget, two things, budget and one other I'll get to. It comes down to budget. A budget should be a statement of our national values. What is important to us as a country should be how we allocate our resources. The arts are a very important part of that. And nobody taught us that better than President Kennedy. I'll get that in a moment, too. But one of the fights that I had when I first went to Congress, because here I went thinking, we're going to double the arts budget and this or that, and what happened was the Republicans took over and cut it in half. But it was about content restriction. It was about content restriction. We had so many fights about content restriction, and we kept saying, what's with this? This is the arts. This is about free expression. This isn't about somebody in Washington, D.C. deciding how to chill your creative instincts. And so that was part of our fight. And they said, well, we've got to reduce the deficit. The arts budget is like a hair on my head compared to my whole head of hair. And they're going to reduce the deficit while they give themselves big tax breaks unpaid for and all the rest to increase the deficit. They're going to cut the arts budget. And you see what they did in this budget now. So just hoping that it's a notion and not a full-fledged idea. Let's dissuade them of that notion by having your voices heard. Now, if you live in my district or a district like mine, if you have one phone call, don't call me. Call your friend who lives in a Republican district and have that person call their member of Congress. It's very important that the Republicans hear from their own constituents. So maybe you used to live someplace else and have friends. Maybe you grew up someplace else other than a Democratic district, because the Democrats are all fine. The budget, the content restraint, none of that. All of it. And Betty McCollum has been so wonderful in the Appropriations Committee. Dianne Feinstein, when she was on that committee. Louis Slaughter, our co-chair of the Arts Club. But if you really know your power, know that you can make all the difference in the world. That's how we saved some of this in the 90s. They want to cut all out. We saved Corporation for Public Broadcasting, the other entities too that are part of the what we call the arts and the manifestation of arts, the distribution of the arts. So please do that, because this is what President Kennedy said, the soul of our country, the civilization that we are and the rest, and that's how we will be measured. Getting back to President Kennedy, I had the privilege of being with his family, with Caroline and other members of the Kennedy family at the Kennedy Center for the 100th birthday celebration, and Yo-Yo Ma performed, and it was beautiful. I mean, others performed too, but I mentioned him because when the first fundraiser for what would become the Kennedy Center, it wasn't called that because President Kennedy was there and alive with Jackie at the first fundraiser for the Kennedy Center was this little boy coming out with his cello, Yo-Yo Ma, played for President Kennedy as a child, and now was playing at his 100th birthday. Very exciting. And of course, the Smithsonian did something a few weeks before. There's been a lot of celebration about it, but there isn't one celebration about President Kennedy that isn't focused on the arts and what the arts mean to our country. So that's our tradition. Speaking of which, again, poor Bob, he's heard me so many times say these things. But one of the things that I love, one of the best quotes that I love, because our country is always about opportunity, more opportunity for future generations. You know? John Adams, you all know this probably, but let's say it as a prayer together then. John Adams wrote to Abigail, and he said to her in a letter, I must study war and politics so that our sons can study mathematics and navigation and commerce, etc., and medicine, so that their children have the freedom to study poetry and music and porcelain and painting and sculpting. Isn't that amazing that one of the broadening of opportunity at the earliest time of our country was about the arts? And of course, respect for the arts is in our own Constitution to protect creativity and the rest.
That's wonderful.
You've heard it so many times. Poor Bob.
No, I love it. I never get tired. But that actually raised each one of those things, besides being wonderful and beautiful, is also a job creator. And I want to just ask you a question about jobs, because it's an ever-present thing, decades of hearings and debates about creating jobs and trying to get the arts understood there. And I think everybody here knows, but it bears repeating, that in 2009, as Speaker of the House, you led the effort to keep the $50 million of stimulus funds that went through the National Endowment for the Arts for job creation in the final legislation. And in doing so, you ensured that the jobs bill would include support for artists and those that work in the arts and cultural sector. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And so you've heard probably every argument under the sun for supporting jobs and public investments. What's your advice to those of us here, arts advocates, on how to make these approaches even stronger. And just by the way, just before we launched our Arts and Economic Prosperity 5 study, which is not that, but that's where I launched it, right up there.
Okay.
And we learned that there's roughly a $30 billion increase in the economic impact of the arts over 5 years ago, so 165 billion.
Well, here's the thing, the argument for the economic argument for the arts, let me just say, I put that $50 million in there, and I got mocked, oh, we're talking about jobs, how, I'm trying to think of a euphemism, how unaware some of them were about the value of the arts, whatever the money. And again, this is a $700 billion bill. We're talking about $50 million. I want it more. Here's the thing, though. The most recent statistics that I have seen are for 2015. 2015, the arts contributed $698 billion to our economy. Almost $700 billion to our economy. Almost 5%, 4.8, something like that, % of our GDP. More than construction and transportation. Either of those two. More than that, what you have thought it. And so we have to, with great confidence, make the arts argument. Of course, in our city, it's self-evident, but in the country, we have to make the jobs argument. I don't know why how can I say this? I know they must have arts in their lives and their children and the rest of that, but we have to make that argument. Again, call a member of Congress and we need arts. And it has another effect. It helps people hone their skills and, maybe transfer from music to engineering or something, what the arts have in common with other things. So it's about keeping America #1 in every respect in terms of our civilization. Now, when we had the earthquake here, one of my priorities was the rehabbing of the ACT, the American Conservatory, not the ACT. Yes, the ACT, but it's the Gary Theater. And the Gary Theater is like an institution here. The ceiling fell in, it was really demolished in the earthquake. And so I made that a priority for our attracting funding, but not only that, changing the law a bit so there was a recognition that this was an economic development when we repaired the Gary Theater. If you go there, you'll see a window devoted to me. That's one of that and that street sign in Baltimore. I think that's what I have. But anyway, no. We just left Nancy Pelosi Drive in Golden Gate Park going by the AIDS Grove. That's the sum total, and that's good enough for me.
That is great.
I feel so at home with you. You're like members of the family, so I'm bragging about my 3 things.
I'd love to, before I ask you a President Trump question, I would love to first ask you about bipartisanship or having to deal with the very broad elected leadership that we have, elected officials. So you've been a Democrat
Since birth.
Since birth, yeah. And while you've been in Congress, you've been in the minority and the majority. Which one is better? No, you don't have to answer that, I know. But on either side of the aisles in Congress, and certainly in local and state legislators, our advocacy objective is to build support with all elected officials.
Of course.
And because that works best in the long run. But it might seem like a strange question to ask the person in charge of strengthening the Democratic Party in Congress, but what do you think about how bipartisanship in general and how we should be approaching leaders on the other side?
Yeah, look, this is not partisan. It's not political. It's almost spiritual. I mean, it's about humanity. That's what we're talking about here with the arts. Now, let me just say that when I grew up in Baltimore in Democratic politics, we didn't have, the Republicans were our friends. We had a different point of view on subjects, but they're our friends. I mean, when I was a teenager, I would double date with the Republican governor's children. I mean, we were all friends. It wasn't this way, and it doesn't have to be this way. So I wasn't raised in a tradition of we and them kind of thing. But there are philosophies of government, and there are differences, and we're passionate about them, dispassionate about how we treat each other, but passionate about getting the job done. So with this subject, as I said, first thing, this can be a unifier for us. As far as you're concerned, you just want the vote. You don't care if it's a Democrat or Republican or whatever. You just want their support. You just want their support. And you have to assume that they will be of goodwill. And you have to be always optimistic because you have confidence in your message. You have confidence that the arts are important to our country's soul, economy, the well-being of our children, how they're educated, and the rest, and what that means to our nation. So you're going in pure of heart in terms of what is political or not, but just about making your case. And I remember when Bono first was coming to see us about, by the way, he's going to be in D.C. on Tuesday. He was already here. You too, they were doing debt forgiveness for the millennial, for the poor countries, and then on to HIV/AIDS and stuff like that, using celebrity for a good cause, and it was very imperative to work across the aisle for those things. You have many celebrities who come in about the arts, and not just fabulously talented people, but people deeply understanding what the arts mean, not just to their personal success, but to our country and what it means economically. So if you want to forget everything spiritual, humanitarian, cultural, or artistic, and just make the flat-out economic argument, you are on very, very, very solid ground. And I would, again, approach everyone. We saved the Corporation for Public Broadcasting because some of the chairs of the board of those state organizations were Republicans. And so it's like a giant kaleidoscope. On this issue, on another issue, it might be this half of the room against that half of the room. And then the next issue, the back half of the room against the front half of the room. It's always, everybody's a resource to each other at some point. So you don't hurt any resource. So everything you do is building bridges, understanding Shelley, imagination. How do we find our common ground? And then you'll find out who your friends are. I mean, you're going to have to get an answer from some of these people. They're going to have to vote at some point. And I think that the friendlier your approach, the better, up to a point. I mean, people have to know there's a consequence to saying no. Well, this means something to us, this means something to our community. We want to know how you value the arts in your official agenda.
Let's get into a 2017 time
I'm
period.
just being really honest with you, so.
So Donald Trump has been president for 148 days now. How do you think it's going? No. No, I'm not. That's an easy one. What I really want to ask you.
You had to bring him up, didn't you?
Well, I do because of the president's budget.
Yeah.
And so last year during the election, though, our Arts Action Fund surveyed all the presidential candidates, 22 that we started out with, and we got answers from all of them.
And he said?
And what he said was, when he returned his survey, that he believed in the arts, that he's a product of a liberal arts education, and that he
has a strong vocabulary.
He has a strong
That's what I heard him say.
He did say that.
I think because he counted the words he knew.
Well, and he wanted to be an arts advocate, and he said, and that he would defer to Congress for funding of the NEA and things like that. Now, that was last year. This year, he and Mick Mulvaney, OMB, have proposed full termination for the NEA, the NEH, the Corporation of Public Broadcasting, the Institute of Museum Library Services, among the $50 billion in cuts. So I think I'm quoting you correctly, that you spoke about this proposal as one of the dumbest moves that could have been made with stiff competition.
With stiff competition, yeah. One of his dumbest moves was stiff competition. Here's the thing. I mean, really. He's for the arts, and he's going to cut the NEA, the NEH, the museums, the library, the whole Corporation for Public Broadcasting, the creation of the arts, the distribution of the arts, the education of the arts. He also said he was going to rid the planet of the misery of disease and cut $7 billion out of the National Institutes of Health. That's 1/5 of their budget, $7 billion. So, what can I say? What can I say? I want you to have the proper attitude when you go in to see these people, almost as if you didn't even think they could even come up with such a scheme. No, it's really very sad. And they know what that budget is. Again, it's supposed to be a statement of values. And they call this a compassionate budget. Compassionate budget. I can't. What can I say? I think his statements both times speak for themselves. Now, we'll see, because left to our own devices, this may be hopeful to you, left to our own devices in the Congress, in the Appropriations Committee, that's the place where I was forged in Congress, Appropriations and Intelligence, both of those two committees. And by and large, we try to do our work in a nonpartisan way. We have but find our common ground. Left to our own devices, the appropriators can find their common ground. And I don't think there are many people on the Republican side of appropriations will stand for cutting out the NEA and the NIH and all the rest. I just don't think they will do that. $7 billion out of the National Institutes of Health, 30% of the State Department budget for diplomacy and preventing conflict and the rest. Come on. I'm going to have he said I'm going to have clean air and clean water for the kids, gutting the EPA. 30% cut in the EPA too. So I can't, from one day to the next, I can't explain the differences there. But what I do say is that if Lincoln said it best, public sentiment is everything. With it, you can accomplish almost anything. Without it, almost nothing. So you have to have your voices be heard on this. If you took a measure of public sentiment in the country on arts education in the schools, and even raising taxes to do it, you would get overwhelming support. But yet, we don't have that situation the way we'd like to see it now. But if you just make your voices heard on this, and it's not just about arts for the sake of art, that would be a reason enough. It's what it means to development of an intellect, a confidence it gives children, the economic benefits to our country, the common ground we find across borders about empathy and music and the art, just all the cultural advantages. And it is a winner for us in trade, whether we're talking about in this great state of California, the movie industry and the rest. It is a giant plus for us in the balance of trade. So how can I say, forget him for a minute, just focus on it. As he said, members of Congress, I think that there's a reason to be hopeful. You run into the content restriction crowd, that's a whole different thing. But we would have enough votes to prevent. Now, they will make a cut. They'll make some cuts. And that's unfortunate because we should be going in the other direction. We should be adding so much more, easily doubling. You know the absorptive capacity for multiplying the money that we spend now by 1, 2, 3 times or more. The absorptive capacity is there in your communities for neighborhood arts, community arts, citywide and the rest. We're very proud of our mayor and the arts here. And in fact, the mayors have been really good on the arts. I've been to the Conference of Mayors conferences where they have just focused on the arts, given awards to communities that have, to cities. I say communities because sometimes they'll do it in 2 stages, smaller city, bigger city, awards for the investments and and encouragements they have had for the arts. We're very proud of our mayor and our commissioner of the arts here in San Francisco.
And your commissioner is here, and your mayor
Is
was
he
here
here?
yesterday.
Is
So,
he-
in fact,
Is he here? Tom?
Tom? He's hiding in the back there. So the, actually, I wanted to just tell you, we did do a survey this year of 3,000 people across America and asked the arts education question that you just brought up, and 89% of them,
Yeah, it's a huge number.
huge number, wanted it and wanted to pay for it. And also, as we work with the appropriators, House and Senate, you're absolutely right. We have a number of them that are strong and with us.
Yeah.
So we feel good, but
You have to go in optimistically. You always have to just
yeah.
go in to win.
So I'd love to turn to a couple of questions that came from some members, some people who are here. So Sheila Smith, Executive Director of Minnesota Citizens for the Arts, recently she said recently, we co-sponsored a field hearing out there in the field with Representative Betty McCollum. And
She's wonderful.
Wonderful, ranking member of the Interior Committee that funds the arts. And it was about the impact of the NEA, and very successful. And she was wondering if you could recommend this particular thing, field hearings, or other models for local action.
Yes, the local action is very important because that's where it hits home. First of all, you get the local press, and that's really important. And, you know, lots of times it's really important for us all to come to Washington and make our voices heard cumulatively and blah, blah, blah. But really, the more that can be done at the local level, where the elected officials see right up close and personal what's happening in their own district, is really important. So I would say that Minnesota model is one that everyone should follow. You see what we're doing with healthcare and other issues with town meetings and the rest. I bet you that that was a well-attended hearing in Minnesota. But even if it's not a hearing, it's just a town meeting where you bring in somebody with an official capacity who can talk about public policy and what the needs are locally for the budget, or if you just bring in, not just, but if you bring in artists. And I remember I spoke when they dedicated the Museum of Modern Art the first time, the new place, and then the second time when was a year and a half or so ago. And the first time we celebrated and this and that. And when I came down from the stage, one of the people said to me, "See, this was all private. We don't need any federal money for the arts." And I said, "Well, where are you going to get the artists? You know, this is not just about bricks and mortar, as important as that. You know, that's very important, but a lot of philanthropy did go into that. But to support the artist, that's part of what this is as well." So I think that, and the artists love that, of course. So I think when you have something like, it's not just people in I shouldn't say not just, it's not only the people in the community, but for them to see the local artists come and show the enrichment that they are to the community. I love it. I think it's great. You all should be doing that.
Another question, you've answered this one in part, but Margie Waller from the Topos Partnership asked about mayors and other local leaders.
Yes.
And they say, as we've discussed, that they support funding for the arts because the arts help them do their jobs, keep places safe, make communities more equitable, connect people across neighborhoods, all of these kinds of things. So I'm wondering if Congress, you certainly listened to the mayors, you've gone to the conferences, but is Congress hearing from mayors, and should we, and not just mayors, county commissioners, city council members, the bosses of all of our people here, and what role, what strength do they have?
Well, they have a strong role because they're there on a number of subjects, and to put this in their priorities is very important. But also, when you're doing your advocacy, to be advocating, and we're very proud of Governor Browning, put more money in for the arts, but we need more. You know, we need more. And so, so I think advocating to the governorships, the mayors, the county commissioners is really important, and then to advocate that they also put it on their list of priorities, their agenda when they come to DC. But understand, and you know, because you are local in your communities, that local communities, whether it's mayors, boards of supervisors, or the state government have a strong role to play in all of this as well. That's why I said I'm very proud of what Tom is doing in Mayor Lee in San Francisco. I always think of Paris. They used to say of Paris, the more Paris changes, the more it is the same. In our community, we have such beautiful ethnicity, and the expression of the arts here is so important. And we consider that something that we have to protect, not only with recognition of its value, but when it comes to the high cost of housing, et cetera, that drives people away, you lose some of that soul. And so you have to see, you have a holistic approach to this. The city that we are, that everybody wants to come to, is a city that has become what it is because of the diversity. And the diversity manifests itself in the arts. And when we support the arts, we have to recognize what I call the beauty is in the mix, the beauty of that diversity. If you want to be the city, the state that you aspire to be, that you have always been even, you have to just keep making more progress in that regard.
Todd Trebor here, one of our emerging leaders from the Arts Extension Service at UMass Amherst, my alma mater, said...
UMass Amherst? Amherst? Emily Dickinson, that's one of my favorite poets.
Mine too.
We can recite something.
Yeah. There's a new movie out about her life.
Yes, I heard.
It's stunning. So he says the questions that he gets from his college students here in Massachusetts, where our legislators are generally very pro-arts, and I still vote in Massachusetts because I was never sure if the D.C. gig would work out. If your federal representatives are already pro-arts...
You have a home there, of course.
I do, yes.
Okay. I didn't want to hear about it if you didn't. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't hear you.
Is there anything that that they can do? They're already pro-arts. They're already voting our way. Anything that they can do or we can do with them that can get them to help build federal support for the arts from less friendly places? You used your one call for our people to do it, but what about legislators?
Well, they are for, I mean, Massachusetts, of course, is sort of like here. I mean, everybody, there's no debate, you know, as to whether there's a value to the arts and what priority it should have in itself and in the schools, et cetera. So I do know that the members of Congress and in the Senate from Massachusetts are strong advocates for the arts, and also having so many institutions of higher learning there who support the arts as well. But in the state legislature, they come to Washington too, and they, again, just getting back to your previous point. But I have another story to tell you about UMass. So there's these, there's a grocery store, they're in line, the sign says 8 items or less. This is in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So they're pushing the cart through, and this young man comes through, he's got a whole basket of things, he gets an 8 item or less. And the cashier says, did you go to Harvard and you can't count? Or did you go to MIT and you can't read? And he said, no, I go to UMass and I defy all authority.
That's good. I like
good?
that. Yeah.
You'll use it. You know what it is, though? First time you use it, you heard me say it. Second time, I heard somebody say. Third time, it's all yours.
That's the rule. Julie Morocco here is from an organization called Predatus, and she's in the private sector, private business. And she was asking about the fact that here in the Bay Area, technology capital of the country, there's a lot of technological advancement. And, you know, a lot of people there are benefiting from creativity, innovation, critical thinking. We hear that from the business community, skills that the arts specialize in. So how do we work to ensure that policymakers in Washington are creating policies that support the arts and arts education as the 21st century skill generators that they are?
Again, I want you to be optimistic, but let me just tell you this little aside. One of the fights that we also have is support for education. Now, the federal role in education may be 10%. Most of it is local and state. But what is there is very critical for children with special needs, children in economically disadvantaged areas. Those kind of special things for a purpose. But our colleagues, many of them on the other side of the aisle, have said they'd like to shut down the Department of Education. And one of the reasons is because they teach critical thinking in the schools. They teach critical thinking in the public schools. That's considered a reason to shut down the Department of Education. So does that give you some feel for the job you have ahead of you? That is really, and that's basically what they're trying to undermine in their budget as well. And public education is fundamental to a democracy. Our founders, those beautiful, wonderful, how inspired they were, they thought that an informed electorate was an important part of democracy. And education was so important. And that every stage, we were an agrarian society, and then when we became an industrialized society, then they added more emphasis on high school. And then coming in after World War II, more emphasis on college. Now we're talking about another technological revolution and talking about STEM. Here we call it STEAM. I'm sure you call it STEAM too. Again, we have a thing in California, North and South, but mixed up too, between the content and the distribution and rewarding artists for their work. So that's getting into another kettle of fish that is something that has to be worked out. Our founders have in the Constitution respect for copyright and reward to the creator of the arts. The beautiful technology that we are so proud of here is a way of distributing it in a way that might not reward the creator, and we have to, the creator of that art, and we have to work on that. But all of it is connected. Mm-hmm. All of it is connected. So to your, what is her name? Private sector person who asked the question.
Oh, Julie. Yeah.
This is a challenge, and it will have a beautiful reward. But it has to be done with respect, weighing the equities of increased distribution, increased importance in children learning STEAM throughout their academic lives, and of course, increasing more young girls who are involved in all of that. And technology will have some of the answers. I'm a big believer in technology, that some of the answers that are there, but we have to, in many cases, task for it. This is the challenge in a free market opportunity. Who's going to come up with some of the better answers? But there may have to be a public role in all of that. For example, net neutrality is something that is a big issue for us in Washington, freedom on the internet. And there are those who want to weigh in and say, no, It's more of an issue to go into than you probably want to go into now, but we're big supporters of net neutrality. The new administration, not so much. So that's one of the fights, but freedom on the internet, very important.
I need to be sensitive to your time because I know you have another thing, and we had one more question, which I won't ask, but I wanted you to know that Brad Erickson of Theater Bay Area, right here, asked the question, and of course...
What is it?
Well,
I'm so curious.
The question is about the Public Theater's production of Julius Caesar.
Oh, yeah.
And also,
Shakespeare in the Park.
Given that particular situation, and also how that impacts things like public agencies' funding and what they have to be sensitive to related to censorship or publicly supported projects when they're controversial like that.
Our old friend, content restriction. You know, it's interesting to me about the Shakespeare in the Park, Julius Caesar. Poor Julius Caesar. What did he do to be identified with this guy? I mean, he was a great leader. That was about politics, a tout brute, but it wasn't about... So in any event, I noticed that there were some who pulled their spot, was it Delta and Bank of America, to name two. And it was curious. whether, in other words, it's a difficult time, is that appropriate, and all the rest, everybody's entitled to their opinion. But I will say, because we had a question from Minnesota, you remember, I think the Guthrie, wasn't it, that had the same thing, except it was Barack Obama.
Exactly.
Did you ever hear anybody, any sponsor or anybody say, oh, how shocking, they had Julius Caesar be Barack Obama? Not a word. But when it was, then all the fuss, pulling commercial, all the rest of that. So, I mean, to enlarge the issue to the whole content restriction thing, I think that how can I say this in a nice way? I probably can't. They just have to get over this content restriction thing. You know, I mean, I'm a mother of 5, I have 9 grandchildren. I don't want them to be exposed to things that I don't want them to be exposed to. But it's art. It's creativity. It's freedom of expression. Don't buy it if you don't like it. Don't go see it. But don't say somebody can't create it. Can't create it. At one of these interviews, I think it was during the Democratic Convention or something, the reporter said to me, when you were, do you take issue with the music that your children and my children are grown, but that your children and grandchildren, did you, when they were growing up and now, did you weigh in and object to the music that they were listening to? I said, no, I didn't, because you have to remember, in my era, it was Elvis Presley. And no parent had ever seen anybody swivel his hips like Elvis Presley, right? So I didn't expect, I wouldn't even cared if my parents said you can't watch Elvis Presley. But you're all too young to know how different that was from everything that had gone before. Actually, he was a black musician who happened to be white. And he crossed over, and it was fabulous. But the equivalent of that now, whatever it is, enjoy.
So I just want to say, for a life of public service, career supporting the arts, and what they can do for America, Leader Nancy Pelosi, we thank you.
Thank you. I hope you got what you wanted. I don't know. Thank you. Let me just say that Bob Lynch is such a gift over a period of time. I mean, he has relentlessly and brilliantly guided us, and we wouldn't be anywhere near where we are today. I mean that on the plus side. I'm not talking about the challenges we face. But he's really a personification of the fact that there are certain people who make a tremendous difference. You are all of those. You are people who make a difference, and you have this magnificent person in the lead in D.C. And let me just do this one other thing, not about Bob, but about somebody that he referenced from time to time. Our country is a great country. Our country is a great country. We can withstand anything. In any event, thank you all very much. Thank you.
That's Thank you.
Wow, what a great session, wasn't that? Please join me in thanking Democratic Leader Nancy Pelosi for those very candid remarks. Bob Lynch, Abel Lopez, and all the leadership awardees. Let's give them all another great big round of applause. I'm Julie Morocco. I'm the incoming chair of Americans for the Arts Board of Directors, and it's great to be here with you. For now, I've been asked to provide a little bit of notes here for the rest of the day and to be productive for the convention. Before I do, though, I really do want to, on behalf of the Board of Directors, my colleagues, thank all of you for being here today. Thank you for taking the time away from your friends and your family. Thank you to your organizations for sending you here. We are so inspired by all the things that you are doing in your local communities, and we want you back next year. So thanks a lot for that. So, okay. Right now, okay, if you have to keep your seats, one of the servers is going to be here very soon to deliver the lunch to you. You can find silverware in the centerpiece on each of your tables. You'll have about 45 minutes to eat and network, and then the next breakout sessions begin at 1:15 in the afternoon. For those of you who are departing to the Arts Venture Tours, please meet at the Summer of Love Lounge, and that's at either 1:30 or 2 p.m., depending on whatever your tour is. And if you're interested in attending the Art Venture but haven't signed up or registered, you can visit the main registration desk and find out what the availability is. If you are not taking an Art Venture tour, never fear. We've got some great breakout sessions in this afternoon. The programming, again, begins at 1:15 p.m. And finally, did everybody have a really good time last night? I certainly did. Wow, we've got Clay Lord to thank for that. But we've got another terrific evening planned for you. Where is it? Here? Okay. Finally, if you want to see the beautiful city, right above, right at the sunset, we have it starting at 8 p.m. tonight, conveniently timed, right at the perfect moment for the sunset. Please come up to the Cityscape Lounge on the 46th floor of the North Tower for the Meet the Members reception. It's a great opportunity to mix and mingle, and you don't have to be a member to come. So please come up, and we'll see you all later. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please note that lunch will be served in this room, so have a seat or come on back. Thank you.